everyone. A special thank you to everyone who is with their camera on and allows me to feel I'm not in front of a ton of black screens. I appreciate that. Yeah, the June opening in Ramat Gan was postponed to September. So like many things in 2020 and 2021, everything is moving and shifting. Maybe a couple of words about the trip and the soft launch that Ari, you mentioned for the trip to Israel. I guess the most exciting part for me is this combination between what is kind of the mainstream must-see of the art world in Israel, but also a lot of off the beaten track and understanding more of the complexity. So although you'll get to see the Tel Aviv Museum of Art and the Israel Museum in Jerusalem and meet the curators and artists, we'll also be going to places like a Museum on the Seam in Jerusalem, or the Center of Art and Technology in Hulon, and galleries that are mainstream commercial galleries alongside crazy amazing projects like Hamif'al and Barbour and Koresh 14 in Jerusalem. So it's a combination which and basically Ari has given me kind of a free hand to build the program of my dreams, so obviously I'm really happy about it and very excited to work on it. And I think we can jump right into what we're doing today. Milana, can you just wave so people see who you are? So I'm excited and very honored to have Milana Gitzin-Adiram here, kind of the mind and passion and energy behind Zumu, which we're going to dive in and I'm going to talk about in a moment. And actually, I'll start even just by one moment. Here it is. Let's just start with this. And I will say, maybe the first thing to say about this session, for those of you who are familiar and were with me in previous sessions, it's going to be a slightly different format. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and then transition into a kind of conversation interview with Milana. So you get really a lot of what's going on behind it. And also we're diving into a project that is really a crazy fantasy becoming reality, then shattered in the face of reality, and then rising again and doing that over and over. And it's an opportunity not only to talk about art, but really to understand something about Israeli society, and also about how we can make a difference as human beings in the world and the power of art in that. So we're actually going to talk more about the larger impacts and less about specific artworks. Zumu it's a combination of two words in Hebrew. In Hebrew, zuz is move and museum is museon. So Zumu is a combination of zuz museon, museum move, and it's basically a portable or a transient museum moving around Israel, founded by Milana with an amazing team of people working with her, and standing on three legs or three pillars: art, community, and education. And what we're going to do, we're going to go through these stops, and in each stop we will see the different parts, but we'll also dive each time more specifically into one of the pillars and see how it functions. And you can see I've put here the map because the first thing to understand is how embedded this project is in Israeli society, in Israeli geography, and in what periphery is not only a geographical periphery, but also sometimes social or socioeconomic periphery. So you can see over here on the map, we have the first stop in Yerucham, a small town in the south of Israel, then the second stop in Arad, the third stop in Chatzor HaGlilit, the fourth stop in Kiryat Yam. The fifth original stop in the Lower Galilee was postponed, and then canceled because of COVID, although will probably appear in the future in some format. And then what was meant to be the sixth station became the fifth station of Lod, which sadly we've all heard about in the news for all the wrong reasons not too long ago. And that station was about to open on May 18th of this year. If you remember your dates, May 15th, all the violence and war erupted, and Zumu Lod 3 days before its opening came to a full stop, basically. So you can see that even though we're going to talk about art here, we are also going to talk very much about where these things are happening and how. And I want us to start with Yerucham, the first stop. You don't need to, I'm putting here the information for those of you who love more information on the screen. Yerucham is a small town in the south of Israel. One of, if you know the term, considered a development town, you can see it was founded in 1951 and a small population of 10,000 people. This is true to 2019. And this is the first station of Zumu Lod after years of planning and thinking and figuring it out. Together with the municipality of Yerucham, Zumu takes over this abandoned school. You can see the classrooms here, and you can see this vacant space over here, and basically starts dreaming. Can you see this is the school? This is a new structure to be built there. Starts dreaming and very quickly starts building the first museum to be erected and working and functioning for a month in Yerucham. I'll also just mention, since I can see Ari is writing in the chat. So Ari, I just want to ask if you see in the chat a question that I should look at when it's being asked and shouldn't be saved for later, please interrupt me. Okay?
So I'll only interrupt you now by telling people, funnily enough, next month on July 6th, 13th, and 20th, we are going on virtual visits to Yerucham to meet with 3 communities, the Bnei Israel, the Bedouin, and Moroccan Jewish community. So the fact that you chose Yerucham here ties into something. I put a note into people to invite them to register early because it hasn't even come out to the public yet.
Perfect, amazing. And you, if you just heard what Ari said, these different communities, Yerucham, like many peripheral towns, are a combination of different waves of migration to Israel. They're, in this case, not only a geographical periphery, but also a lot of difficulties in terms of socioeconomic, just day-to-day life. And Zumu chooses that as the first station, building this kind of greenhouse in Zumu, and you can see here the opening night and how it fills up. And here you can see kind of the space as it looks like the art was hanging both in this greenhouse and in the classrooms. And actually, I want to use Yerucham, the first station, to say a few words about bringing art to the periphery and what does that mean. Because one of these pillars, the contemporary art with Zumu, it's about bringing the best art, which you could see and observe in any large museum in a big city, and bringing it to the periphery. In a way, if you think about it, it's creating some kind of base level so that people can engage the same way people will engage in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and not because of the distance and different funding be completely cut off of the culture. So I want us to see a couple examples of this. Some of you might have heard of the photographer Adi Ness and his biblical series. This series of photographs is one of the highest selling Israeli artists and exhibited all over the world. This is his work Hagar, and this is the work Cain and Abel. And you can see here, it's hanging in a classroom with kids talking about it, learning about it, something that would be hanging in the MoMA and or in the Tel Aviv Museum, and having that direct encounter with art that we would normally go to very fancy institutions to see. So already we have this engagement that says, the fact that people are far away, the fact that people might not have the funds or the accessibility, whether it's economical or whether it's social or whether it's geographical, we want to go beyond that barrier and bring the art to them and see how this thing belongs to everyone at every age and every location. So it's a very powerful statement, which obviously, questions of insurance, right? Of liability, of how do you bring these expensive artworks to a place. It's a huge logistical risk, right? But it's a deep belief in the fact that art isn't some kind of, I'd say, motarot. I lost the word in luxury, but rather an essential part of life, and everyone should be able to access it. Another example of a work by Elham Rokni, and what I want you to see here is this, because the first thing when we go into a museum is we can't touch, right? We need to stand from afar. And in Zumu, another thing, and we'll see it as we go along and talk more about community and education, the whole relationship to the artwork is completely different. It's exhibited in a way that invites a direct interaction with it and allows as much as possible and in a variety of ways to experience it physically and not only see it from far away. Another thing that Zumu does with a contemporary art community and artists is bringing artists from the highest tier of the Israeli art scene and either bringing work that is already created and exhibiting it there, or inviting artists to create new work specifically for this site. So this example is a work by Philippe Ranzer. His works are, again, standing in Tel Aviv Museum, in the museum in Jerusalem, in basically in the consensus, the mainstream of the Israeli art scene. And here he created an artwork for Zumu. And another example, and again, this touches more on community, and we'll talk about it more as we go along. This work by Daniel Davidovsky, these bicycles actually are connected to computers and they play music and a performance. And this is a performance and sculptural artist that is used to working alone. But coming to Yerucham and starting to work there, he was put in touch with the robotics students of Yerucham and ended up building this whole project together with them. And suddenly there's an artwork that is created not by the artist alone, but actually by the artist together with school children from the community that then come to the museum and see their work exhibited. And I'll say on the other, from the other direction, these artists are suddenly experiencing a whole different way of creating art. From being very much as an artist, you're alone in your studio, you're doing stuff, they're suddenly pulled into a different space, a community, a totally different inspiration. And this affects not only the hosting community, but also the artist itself and the final art piece. For those of you who recognize, you can see behind here the other photo by Adi Ness hanging here. And you can see here a pile of sunflower seeds from a project by Noam Edri that is basically, how do you say lefatzeach in English? I have no idea. Eating the sunflower seeds for peace in the Middle East. She does it with neighboring cities, and she's been doing it for quite a few years. And everyone who is eating, they throw the seeds into a pile. So the pile slowly grows up, and we suddenly have this pile of sunflower seed shells that basically are an evidence of the people that sat and spoke there. You can see here Milana in conversation with the former mayor of Yerucham, and you can see these kids of Yerucham and its neighbors doing exactly the same thing. So this democratization of art and bringing art that is happening in the best art venues to this place and allowing people to take part in it. And we're going to end this part of Yerucham before moving on to the next stop with what became the trademark of Zumu, the harvest container or the communal work. These containers were basically brought to this space over here and became the home for artwork by Sharon Glasberg, who is the community director of Zumu and an amazing artist represented by Ruart Gallery in Tel Aviv, to create works that are happening with the community. In this work, she met with people from the community in Yerucham who each chose an object to tell her about the story, and they were filmed, and you could walk into that huge container and see these different videos and hear the stories of the people of the city and the different objects. A beautiful work that marks the beginning of kind of the Zumu community collection that Sharon in each stop added to. And in this way, I'll also say that alongside the contemporary artists, Zumu also invites artists that are local to take part in the exhibition, finding ways to bring together. And this is not a small thing, because when you're exhibiting contemporary artists from the highest tier of the scene in the country, and then figuring out how to curate together with them people that do art locally, that aren't part of the scene, but actually have a lot to say and contribute in terms of the art making within a community, and that becomes also part of the exhibition. This is another image from Sharon's installation in the container. And we're moving on to Arad, another southern city, much larger, and also brings into it a lot of Bedouin communities from around, and it's also kind of a stop between the Dead Sea and Jerusalem, so a lot of people stream into the city, and you can see the population, 26, almost 27,000, and a city with, again, not only the Bedouin population coming in, but also a large ultra-Orthodox Hasidic community of the city, and secular and religious, so a lot of things are going on there. And I want to use Zumu Arad to talk a little bit about the community aspect, and also about being site-specific and part of the community. So Zumu in Arad took place in what used to be the towel factory of Arad, and was actually, this textile factory gave jobs to a lot of people in the city until it was closed and was completely moved to Jordan, and left a lot of people unemployed. And Zumu took place in this factory, taking from that also the theme of mechanisms and how things worked, taking over the contemporary gallery as the city as a factory, and using the factory as the exhibiting space. So we're seeing a kind of large view of the exhibition. And this means that basically the artists were not only bringing their works, but also directly relating to the story of Arad, to the story of this factory, to factories or mechanisms in general, to the way these things affect people. You can see here the works by painter Zoya Cherkassky that obviously relate directly to this factory. And this work by Tamar Oded that was created as a kind of assembly line in the gallery and then transitioned partially into the exhibition space. Here we're seeing also works by Natalia Zurbova that were painted with people from Arad going outside and painting the city itself and painting people from the city. So in Arad, Zumu is also taking it another step further of being part of the community, not only in terms of the location, not only in terms of the theme, but also the work process of the artist being part of the city. This work by Guy Koningstein, to me, is a beautiful way to really understand how this art touches people in the community. He created these walking sticks, but it's not an exhibit that you just look at. You could take the sticks as a visitor and walk with them throughout the museum with these sculptures that are obviously functioning very, very differently from a walking stick that is to just aid stability, but the art becomes part of how you experience the exhibition. Some of the works, you can see this by Nathalie Eilon, it's a mechanism, mechanica sculpture, and we're seeing here another point of view. I'm going back for a moment to what we spoke about, bringing high-end Israeli art. This sculpture is standing in the permanent collection of the Tel Aviv Museum of Art, the sculpture by Yigal Tomarkin, who's one of the most prominent Israeli sculptors. So still bringing these into the mix. And we're seeing here another way of totally being part of the community, but also involved in the theme in this work by Uri Batzon, who's a painter, but he here creates this kind of new space from his paintings, inviting people in to create within this kind of cave igloo painting space and contribute their own work to what's happening here. And you can see in this way that the idea of community isn't only about exploring, researching, and artists coming in and just saying, here, we have what to give, but rather creating space for sharing and creating something together in a very, I'd say, generous and creative way. And we're going back to the harvest container, the next work by Sharon Glasberg that happens in Arad. She goes and she records lullabies by older people in Arad, in Yiddish, in Russian, in Hebrew, in all the languages there. And people could, you can see the buttons over here, and you could lay down. The baby here is out of focus, but it's really beautiful because there's also a baby sleeping here. You could lay down, press the button, and just listen to lullabies in different languages. And you can see again in this way, it's literally taking the community and bringing it into the museum, creating new work, and then also allowing people to participate in a way that you would normally not see in a museum. We're moving on. I'm looking at the time and realize that I want us to hear Milana as much as possible. So we're moving on to Hatzor HaGlilit, a city in the north of Israel, a small city, and the Zumu over here takes over MBC, a kind of college in the industrial area of the city. And you can see what it looks like when it's empty. Right? We can see it here. You can see the containers, which we already know that will contain the communal work. And in that way, Zumu is already becoming a tradition and a ceremony and a ritual, which actually becomes the theme of Zumu in Hatzor HaGlilit. And what I want us to do, we're going to just watch this 1-minute video because I think it gives an understanding of the pace and the rhythm and what was going on there. And then we're going to use Hatzor to talk more, dive more into the third pillar of education. Okay, so I think that gives a little bit of the rhythm, and here we can see a very wide view of this space, and it also allows us to understand a little of how different it is from a normal museum where we go and there's so many walls and separations and text, and suddenly we enter a space which is a museum, and it looks like a crazy, I'd say, Luna Park. It looks like this crazy place where you as a viewer get to decide almost where you're going, and your eyes are pulled in every direction. And I want us to talk a little bit about how this thing works in terms of education. And we can see here the different spaces and the people here. So Zumu, in every city it arrives, it doesn't bring its guides, but rather it calls for local people, guides of all ages, whether they're school students or whether they're in their pensioner years, who want to take part. And those people will go through training with the Zumu and become the guides of this museum. So it's the community itself that are guiding their own fellows, people, classmates in the museum. And the museum also works with the schools. So we have literally tens of thousands of kids and people coming through the museum and being guided by people from their own city, not from people from outside. We can see here in the container this project by Sharon. She took photos of objects in people's hands, and these photos were here, but in the sound you could hear the stories and you could try and guess what story goes with which object. In the second container there was a big photocopying machine, and people could take a picture, a photocopy of their own hand, and hang it up and become part of this project. In the center of the space, 3 artists kind of created a centerpiece or a stage for community events to happen and take place. And Zumu invites people from the different communities. And in Zumu Chatzov, there was also already an artist residency inviting artists to work in the city prior to the opening. And we're seeing an example of a work by Daphne Talmon, who created a whole book of kind of mental maps of people in the city. These are a few examples. When you enter Zumu, you get tea and cookies and you're welcomed in. It's not like a regular museum in that way. And here we're seeing a piece by Photo Julie. It's a kind of photo house project that takes back this classic idea of being photographed in a studio, and they put this backdrop and people could sit down and have their photo taken. So already a whole different kind of understanding of what it is to enter. And the other pretty amazing thing is, in most museums, the workshop or the kids' place is in a separate part. You see the artifacts and then you go somewhere to do, or sometimes you have a children's and youth wing and they go separately. In Zumu, there's none of that. It's all one piece, and the workshops happen in the space itself. So there's no separation. There's a full understanding that whether you're 5 years old or 95 years old, you have a way and a right to experience this art, to enjoy it, to play with it, to engage with it. So you can see how this works. And so many of the works, this work, for instance, by Hani Khatib, is a salt table. And you can see here in the images, you can write on it, and this kind of steel dial goes by and erases every time you write. So this engagement, this fun, and you can see just by the pictures the different populations that come in. This place is inviting for whoever it is, including creating viewing spaces to watch video art that are totally different from what we'd normally see in a museum, and engaging with the art, like in this work by Miriam Cabeza, this pool of gold where kids and adults were invited to dip their hands and talk about what it is to dip your hands in gold. And I can say that when I was there, I was just standing and kind of just trying to listen to what the kids were saying, because the moment you let kids, no matter, again, not only their age, but their background, their ethnicity, their religion, no matter anything, the moment you let them engage, it's just beautiful to see and hear what comes out. You can see here a bit more of the space. And we're moving to Kiryat Yam. I know this is insane. I want to try and get all the way to the end in the next 5 minutes so we can transition into a conversation with Milana. Kiryat Yam is the largest city that Zumu had their station in. You can see the population, 40,000 people. It's adjacent to Haifa. So a very, very big city. We can see here Sharon Glasberg in one of the meetings prior to Zumu, because it's a year and month of working before bringing the artists in, meeting with people, trying to figure out together what this will look like, and having the community really part of this. Zumu in Kiryat Yam was held in an abandoned, huge supermarket, and its theme at this point was pathways, if you just think of aisles. And pathways, and this idea also of a building itself transitioning from some space that everyone visited to a completely abandoned one. And I want to use this station also to kind of tie in the 3 pillars and see the effect of them. You're seeing here the supermarket the way it is when it was still empty, and yes, they're cleaning the space. And here you can see it with art, and this idea of exhibiting fine art in spaces that are not the white cube, and also the beauty. Just look at the beauty that happens from it. It's a whole new appreciation of art, of its ability to be part of a space, to engage with a space. This is a performance artist, Maya Sharabani, in the opening event of Zumu. She's dressed up like a supermarket saleswoman. She doesn't normally look like this. And she engaged with visitors regarding price tags and consumerism. We're seeing this work by Guy Shelf, a sound piece. And I love these photos because I don't know how often it is that you see people in a museum having so much fun, right? Usually we're all so serious. And this place is fun. He created this sound installation. So if you shook each of these bars, you got a totally different sound. This is the ceiling view, and these rods that he created, each created a different sound. So people were standing and playing basically music by shaking these rods. And this is in the container by Sharon Glasberg, where she met with people from Kiryat Yam to hear stories again about objects, but she asked them to put them in the sand and then uncover them. And then in the containers, they were filled with sand and the videos were screened on them. So kids and adults could engage with the sand and play with it as they're viewing these huge hands kind of pulling out objects from the sand and talking about their stories. And I want to show this also to understand how powerful it is when people see works that touch them specifically, whether it's this photograph or whether this video art. And I don't know if you can see here, there's a person in a wheelchair over here. I'll also just say that all photographs I'm showing were approved by the people photographed to be shown, so no worries about that. But there's such a huge power for a viewer to see him or herself represented in the art that they're seeing and engage with that. And we're seeing here just two very beautiful and powerful examples, as well as just having art that we can touch, that we can play with, that isn't far away from us. Another work here by Tamar Atun, this huge bubble, which I must say that after COVID feels like a completely different thing. This dome to walk into and write on and paint on. And you can just see, this is Gili Avisal creating his work in Zumu Kiryat Yam. You can just see how engaging the things are. This work by Aviv Greenberg, and you can see how these things make people move and interact and have a conversation about the place. These were the guides for Zumu Kiryat Yam. So again, people that live in the city that answered that open call to guide and now, became museum guides and received all that training. And I'll also say none of them are volunteers. They are paid by Zumu. So I think it's very important to say that also the economic ethics of Zumu is extremely impressive in a country where nothing is funded, and Zumu sadly doesn't have any funding from the government and is basically recruiting money for each station, sometimes receiving some from the municipality, but mostly from donations, but still makes sure to pay everyone from guides to artists as part of their vision. You can see here more photos from Zumu Kiryat Yam, and this is a photo from the Lower Galilee, what was supposed to be the 5th station in Zumu, but in 2020, as we all know, the world kind of started closing down. This station was postponed and then postponed again and then postponed again until they decided that for this point, it's better to not do the station, to keep it for another time, and to turn all the focus to what would be the next station to open, the city of Lod, which is also going to the most complicated city, which might not be in the geographical periphery of Israel, since it's literally 20 minutes drive from Tel Aviv, unless there's traffic. But you can see here the population of 77,000. It's not only such a large city, it's also an extremely complex city in terms of population, Jews and Arabs, religious and secular, crime and poverty, alongside new high-tech and companies coming in. It's really a very, very complex city, and Zumu takes that city, decides to go in and also make another move, which is having the exhibition be mostly, almost completely outdoors. so that whether COVID continues or not, because when they started, they couldn't know, this event could still happen. So it was about to take place mainly in the city center, in an area that also is comfortable for both Jews and Arabs of the city, so that it's not in one neighborhood that maybe some people will feel comfortable going into and some people not. We can see the images here. Going into spaces, cleaning, doing a lot of things to make this possible. And we can see pictures of the art already being installed because it was, so close to date. For instance, in this space, and we can see the artwork that was already there. So some of the artwork was already up before May 15th. And a week, I think it's a week or 2 weeks before, there were posters all over Lod inviting the people to take part of Zumu. We have here kind of a map that was coming out, and just an example for two works that were supposed to happen. This would have been a cover of sewage holes in the city. And these school shirts were supposed to be part of a work by Shai Idaloni that would be in Zumu. As we mentioned, 3 days before it was supposed to be open, and start, and after all the schools were kind of had Zumu in their curriculum and all the guides were trained and the artwork was up, the war broke in Israel and riots in mixed cities in Israel, with the main one being Lod, and Zumu had to come to a full stop after actually their previous station being canceled because of COVID, this next one being completely stopped. So what I want to do now, one moment. I hope you're as excited as I am, because what I want to do is to invite Milana into the conversation and to start maybe, first of all, Milana, hi, just say hi so you pop on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Shirel. Wow, I'm so excited, and I have goosebumps from all my kind of history. So thank you. It was an amazing introduction. Thanks.
Thank you. So what I want to do is, maybe I jumped in straight to Yerucham, but I want to start by asking you, where did this idea come from? Like, what happened? You were, I'd say, a regular curator within the Israeli art scene with job offers in some of the best museums and already working in one. Like, it wasn't about not having where to practice your profession. So if you can say a little bit about what drove you to go on this journey.
Sure. So it started actually when I was the director and chief curator of Bat Yam, the Bat Yam Museum, Mobi. When I started working there, I realized that there is no one community. Actually, there is many communities in the city. And if you want to start and bringing more audience to the museum, you need to start understanding them. So the idea was to start going to them, understand what's their weakness, what's their ideas, what's their interest actually, and then building a special program for them. So since we started doing this in Bat Yam, I realized that the most amazing or influential thing that we can do with art is influence people in building a conversation benches for those people that their voice never been heard before. They're not, although Bat Yam and Kiryat Yam and Lod is 10 minutes drive from Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, they've been never to the Israel Museum or the Tel Aviv Museum. It happens not just in Israel, it happens all over the world. So I've decided that I want not just to make a change in the art world, but actually to change the Israeli society, to give the opportunity to people to participate in culture and art, and to hear their voices, being part of this conversation discourse. And after I was running Bat Yam, I've decided to leave since the mayor went to jail. That happens in Israel as well, unfortunately. And I've been chosen to curate the Israeli pavilion in the Venice Biennale in 2012, curating the architecture pavilion. And when I came back to Israel, I said, okay, museum check, Biennale check, what's my next goal, kind of? And I started working with local mayors in the Israeli periphery, trying to figure out what is the most, or what is the benefit of culture and art institution in the peripheral cities, how it can help. Is the art is like the icing on the cake, or is it for everyone?
Milana, I want to ask you something, because you're describing this huge vision and you're one woman. So can I just ask, what, like, where do you get the courage to do that? Like, what? It's a very big journey to embark on, and you're describing it as if like it makes so much sense to just say, I want to change society with art. Let's start talking with mayors. Can you maybe say something about where the inspiration and the courage comes from to make such a move?
We live in Israel. Israel is a conflict place, and we live in a constant conflict, I would say. On one hand, a cultural, open-minded, amazing society. On the other hand, well, you all know, I don't need to tell you, you follow the news. So for me, art and culture is a tool. It's not just the art for art's sake. It's a tool that we can change society. So I don't know. I was always growing up in a family that my parents always said that if I believe in something, I need to follow it. Not in art, obviously. As every Jewish mother, my mother even asked me a week ago, don't you want to work in a bank or something, high tech or something like that? But I mean, on the other hand, I knew that I need to change the place for my kids. My children, they grow up here, and I need for them to have a change that if they feel welcome to talk or to be part of the cultural discourse, a kid in Yerucham or in Kiryat Yam should have the same opportunity. So I started this journey and asked, I started meeting with people and just telling them this idea of a museum that come to their doorstep or to their home. And people said, wow, it's an amazing idea. Do we have any examples around the world? And I said, I know all kinds of, but not really. Sometimes there is places that bring art. We are not parachuting art. We don't bring art. We build a museum from within the place. Sometimes there is like educational program or community-based program. Okay, this is one thing. For us, this combination or this mixture between art, education, and community engagement, this is the most, I think, unique thing about Zumu that combines.
Can you, before we transition into Lod and the craziness in the future, hopefully, I want to ask if you have in mind a moment from any of the places, the stations of Zumu that like stands out to you as a moment where you could look and say, oh, this is what I was, this is this, like a moment of satisfaction, if you kind of remember or can share with us one moment like that.
I will tell you maybe about Kiryat Yam. It's the last station. We had a small, next to the supermarket that we were working, there was a Georgian food place, some small Georgian food place. And I'm not there every day, of course. We have the team that works there every day, but I come with donors, I come with groups. And one day I come there and I see a small kid who is 9 years old. His name is Yahav. I see him, it's 10 o'clock in the morning and he's not at school. And I'm kind of curious and I'm saying, Yahav, why are you here? Or kid, I didn't know his name till then. And he said, you know, sometimes I don't take the pill. He takes a pill, ADHD, you know, all kinds of pills. And when I don't take the pill, the teacher is not allowing me to go to school. So I've decided to be part of the museum. For me, this is better than school. And he actually took a ticket and rewrote his name, Yahav, and he said, I'll be a guide in the museum, 9 years old, okay? From that moment, actually for 2 months, Yahav came once in every few days when he didn't take the pill and became part of it. And the head of education department in the municipality one day came, Galit, and I said, you know what, we have a kid that is here, he's helping the guides. And she said, who is it? And I said, Yahav. So she said, you know, it's a big city, okay? And she said, I know Yahav. Yahav is the crazy kid that runs up to the trees and make all the teacher crazy. And I said, you know what? Here is the most amazing, helpful kid that help everyone. In the end of we have like a ending party kind of soiree, and he actually made a present for every one of the Zumu team with their names. And his mother came with tears and he said, you saved my kid. He knows what he wants to do when he will be an older person. He wants to be part of the culture and art world. So for me, Yahav is one example. I have many of them. And it's amazing. And since then, we work with Galit to help Yahav, you know, to pursue his own dreams. And that's one example. I have many of them, obviously.
So first of all, thank you. I didn't know that story. And before we transition into some questions about Lod, I just want to answer 2 questions that I see in the chat. One is does the museum stay in the place? So until now, no, it doesn't. It's completely temporary, and after a month or 2 months, everything goes away, apart from the people that carry that dream and idea and vision with them. And
Maybe
another,
I must say, just a second, Shirel, it's an important question, and thank you for that. We believe in investing in people, not just in art. Once you invest in the people, in the municipality and the guides and the people as a grassroots operation, the people from the city itself, they knock on the door of the mayor and say, we need cultural center here. They need to ask for it. Sometimes they don't even know that they need it. So for me, this is the most important thing. I can't, you know, bring museums all over the country, and Israel is small. They can take a car and drive for 20 minutes and come to a museum. They just need to know that it exists and it should be part of their life.
Thank you. The other question before we move on is, Rochelle asked, is there a cost for community members to enter, or is access free? So it's totally free. No one needs to pay anything to enter Zumu. No tickets, nothing, to just come and enjoy. So what I want to do, our time is running very short, and I want us to hear a little bit about the future plans of Zumu. And I will also say that after hearing a little bit about that, I will invite you all and show a way if you want to be part of the Israeli community supporting Zumu. But let's hear a little bit about Lod. So what's happening now? Because Lod, as you planned it, couldn't happen. I know for the team, it was heartbreaking after a year of working and creating, and that it can't be just reproduced in a city that went through such a trauma. And another thing is that Zumu works with the school calendar so that school children can come in, and we're entering the summer vacation, and that doesn't allow working with schools. So that also puts quite a twist on things. So if you can tell us a little bit about some of this, of what happened to you in the face of the events in Lod, and where you're looking to in the future.
Well, you showed the works and the photos. It's heartbreaking, actually. We were there, you know, installing the artworks, and suddenly we heard that started riots in Jerusalem in the same day. And we left in the evening, and the same evening that we left, the riots started in Lod, actually. And it started actually next to the place that we should have been have the museum, because it was safe for the Arabs and Jews come, and instead of enjoying art, they started burning each other, I would say. So that was heartbreaking. Burning not each other, but I mean burning everything else, and sometimes people were casualties as well. So it really heartbreaks. So since then we started meeting. We left everything for the whole war period, and then we came back for a month, started meeting with people, asking them, what did they feel? Does it make sense to start with an art project, like a huge art project in the middle of the city? How is it connected? You know, bringing everyone to a whole celebration after this COVID-19 that we wanted to have it as an exit strategy. So after a month, we developed, since we are a very flexible project, we decided to leave the exhibition behind us, to say to everyone, thank you so much. We pay everyone and say we continue to figure out what our next exhibition or project. And we decided to make a project that called in Hebrew, Amiftan, or on your doorstep. We are inviting currently, it's happening right now. I'm inviting 15 to 20 artists to actually exhibit on the doorstep of buildings of the Jewish and Arab communities, and working on a painting or other installation on the doorstep of this building. This idea of meeting between the neighbors that were just, you know, losing their faith in their other neighbors, working with the artist, children talking with artists, offering him a cup of coffee, and on the other hand, talking about art. I think it's a project that will be rebuilding, bringing a new spirit to the city. At the end of August, we will have a path of artworks through the city in the doorstep of the building, it's communal building, and you can tour the exhibition and tour the city of Lod and its stories. These works will stay, unlike Zumu that you just heard, they will stay as a present to the city, to the people that were just, you know, having the most violent thing that happened here. And this is a brand new project that I'm so excited about it. It will be guided again by local people in their own city, bringing pride back to this, I don't know, heartbreaking city. I don't have any other words or expressions. I'm sure that it will be an amazing project and will bring back faith in people. I don't know, art matters, culture matters, people matters.
Oh, thank you, Milana. And I think for me, maybe you all know why I said at the beginning that I'm honored to have Milana here, because there's also something, especially in such a harsh reality, someone that dares keep on dreaming and moving the dream forward. And I will say it's Milana gathered around her an amazing team of people that worked with her, artists, curators, designers that worked with her through this journey and are continuing to do so. And the artists that take part in Zumu, as I mentioned, are kind of the top tier of the Israeli art scene. Just before we finish, I want to share with you, for the last few months, just before Zumu Lod, Zumu opened an art sale of Israeli contemporary art that is all a donation to Zumu, since, as I mentioned, they're not funded by the government, and for each station they need to recruit money, sometimes with help from the municipality and sometimes not. And I want to invite you to be part of that community. So what I'm going to do, and Ari will share it with you, but I just want you to see what it looks like. So you can see my screen here. You'll have the link, Art for Change, and it's a benefit art sale. I'll say anything you purchase, 50% goes to the artist and 50% goes to Zumu. Because Zumu is also all about supporting the local art community. and the levels are, you can see small, start your collection, and works up to $1,000. These, by the way, are leading Israeli artists. Their artwork are in the museum collection. There's nothing here that isn't like very prominent artists. And you can view more. Obviously, there's much more. Medium, from $1,000 to $5,000, and their sculptures and their paintings and photographs. Large, you can see the amounts here, and you can see the different artists. Some of the works were sold. We were debating if to open a special site for CSP, and then we thought, no, we want to invite CSP to be part of our community. The people buying at this point are all Israelis. It's us supporting our culture, and we didn't want to like invite you to something different, but rather bring you in to what we're doing here. And this is extra large. You can see the sums. And if you don't want art, which I wouldn't know why, but maybe you don't have any more room on your walls for art, but you do want to support, you can click this button here. It will take you over here. And I will say, any sum, literally, if you have $10, and none of this is going for me, I'm really just inviting you to take part in something that is so dear to my heart. Even if you have $10, $5, it is meaningful. It is actually meaningful. And also all of this is tax recognized, and you'll get all the, I think it's called 501 forms. So that was my little pitch that really comes, you know, just for the love of this place and the ability to do some amazing things in it. And I want to thank Milana for joining us this evening midst a lot of craziness and transitions and reinventing her life project. And I want to thank all of you for kind of taking this journey with us, and Ari for having us here.
And they're asking for the link to the chat link.
I'll send them. I'll send a follow-up with all the stuff in it. So thank you, Milana, and for everything you do. Thank you. And to Shirel, though, Shirel told me about this and said, I have this idea and I want to share about Zumu. And of course, you know, I just basically, whatever Shirel suggests, I generally agree to. And then I'm always wowed by, because it's way better. It's way better than I can ever imagine. So this was way better than I could imagine. A few quick questions for you, Milana, and then a wrap up. So sure. You have these art and they are temporary, but you do have art that's produced there by artists and by the students. What happens to all that art? And what do you take pictures, photos? Is there a place someone can go online to kind of relive the exhibit? Where is all the art?
So the art goes back to the artists. We produce it for them, but you know, they need to continue living, so they sell the art. Sometimes it goes to our online sale to support us. But we have a new brand new website, and it's in English, Arabic, and Hebrew.
Now.
Thank you. So you all welcome to see it and to learn about Israeli art, about our project, about videos that we made. So it's all there. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over there. So it's Zumu. It's Z-U-M-U. Not as it says in the transcription. I love the transcription, by the way. But I mean, you're all welcome. And obviously you're welcome to write me. I'll be happy to answer any questions or ideas, or if you have any ideas, please do. I'm very accessible.
So just to add, I mean, we're going on this amazing trip in May, a boutique arts trip with Shirel. So now you know, if you didn't know Shirel before, you know what she can curate, the people that she knows. So hopefully, Milana, our group will come meet with you and hang out with you. And I don't know if there'll be anything going on when we're there, but maybe see what's going on. So if you are interested in going to Israel and seeing it from an art perspective, you'll be getting an invitation shortly. And Mike, what's the budget to do like a whole project for Zumu?
Wow. It's expensive and not expensive at all. It depends. So every city is around, it's between 7 months and a year of work, okay? Because part of our work with the community, with the education, it takes time. It's not that we're parachuting out, bringing it, and that's it. So it's around 1.5 million to 2 million shekels, not dollars, for every city. So it's expensive, but not expensive at all, I would say, because everyone gets to get in for free. We produce the artworks, we pay to everyone, and it's a whole big team that does all this work. So it's around 5,000 US dollar.
It's about 308,000 US dollars to do
Right?
the whole project. So that's very, I mean,
Let's round that up to $400,000.
I would say it's varied because it depends on the on how big is the city. You know, Yerucham is small, 10,000 people, the population. So we need it smaller. Lod is gigantic city, well, Israeli size. And it's in the middle of the country. So lots of people should have been, they would come. So it's a whole, it depends, but this is kind of the prices.
And then, you know, one of my last questions, do people outside of the community come to this exhibit? So if you had gone through with Lod, would people from Tel Aviv have come to this?
Obviously. When it starts, it's the biggest exhibition actually in the country. Imagine 50 artists of the best Israeli artists are participating in this exhibition. So all the art lovers, culture scene would come, and it would be for them the first time to go to Yerucham, Arad. And also, you know, then they stop in a restaurant. So it all helps for the economic flow in the city. So it all works for everyone, like really nice. And
there was a moment in Yerucham where that tiny town, there was a traffic jam on the main street leading to Zumu. It's like this desolate town in the desert, and there were traffic jams because so many people were coming. So just to understand that. So, the exhibit stays in the city around a month, or in Kiryat Yam, for instance, it was 2 months, which was the longest. And I think you could hear from Milana, especially with what is happening now in Lod, how flexible this project is, because people are dynamic and life is dynamic. And it's not about like art that is static, but rather finding a conversation. So everything changes, and this project does with these changes change itself.
Well, this is an official like CSP stamp of approval, because this is the type of program that we love at CSP. It's art, it's community, it's Israel. And it's Israel at its best. It's not Israel at its worst. It's Israel at what we like to focus on, finding the soul of Israel. So when we go to Israel, like I said, we're going to Yerucham because Yerucham is a place that I want to explore because of its social complexity and the different communities that are there. On our last program to Israel, we spent time in Lod because we wanted to learn about that. We don't go to Israel just to see what everybody else can see. We want to see what makes Israel special. So what it makes Israel special is Milana and Shirel and programs like this. So we're very happy to be associated. And I told Shirel my goal is to get Milana to come here and do something in Orange County. So we'll have to figure that out, what that would look like. But I will tell you, if you are a CSP patron level donor, you get to call Shirel, and Shirel can help you choose an artwork to help Zumu, and you get a $500 credit towards your purchase of your art. So you just got to mention that I mentioned it today, or else I'll forget. But I do want to help Zumu, and I want to help you guys collect art in Israel, and I want to help artists in Israel. And I really know a better way, I guess. So we look forward to seeing you more and tracking your programs, Milana. And thank you, Shirel, for bringing Milana and Zumu to us. I can guarantee that no one on this program has ever heard of Zumu before. So we hope you get more publicity for everything that you're doing outside of Israel, so that people can appreciate Israel and its depth. Thank you, everybody. And I think that's it for now. We're a little bit over time, but I appreciate you all staying with us. And what a great program! What a great way to it's nice to have a positive program about Israel. You know, we read so many negative things, and I wish this program would get much more publicity than it has, because I have not seen much publicity about it over here in the United States. So anybody online, now that you've heard it, and if you are connected with newspapers or anything like that, let's try to get Zumu in the press in this country.
Sure.
Yes. And Ari, I just want to thank you again, because also for me, I mean, just to be able to share with all of you this it's just so inspiring, and inspiration needs to be shared so it can grow and bring more inspiration to more people. So yeah, thank you for everyone who's here.
So come to Israel with us next May. We're going in October as well, you know. CSP is at a point where we'll probably have 2 trips a year, a big trip and a boutique type trip. So this one is a boutique arts trip. Come with us and hang out with Shirel and some amazing artists in May 2022. Be safe, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so
everybody.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.